Welcome everyone. Again, I'm welcoming back. Today is second day of our session, and it's a really great keynote. We understand the product roadmap. Along with that, what is the expectation from the community? Also, he provided. So this is the thing what community need to work. So I'm not wasting much time. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Global BizApps Weekend 2021, powered by the 365 Champs. It's day two today, and we hope you are doing well and keeping safe. I'm Goloknath moderating the session along with Ankush. This session is presented by Arpit Shrivastava. Arpit will be talking about Power Apps portal, security best practices. Arpit is Microsoft MVP, MCT and Power Platform Architect in Capgemini, Pune in India. He is regular speaker, blogger and YouTuber on Microsoft Dynamics 365 on Power Platform. He is expert in Microsoft Dynamics CRM 2021, 13, 15, 16, and now it is Dynamics 365, Power Platform, Power Apps, Power Automate, USD, and CRM portals. Before I hand over the session to Arpit, I'd like to mention that if you have any queries, please feel free to drop it in the chat window. We will take them up during the session if possible or during the QA time. Thank you again for joining and enjoy the session. Arpit, over to you.
Hey, thanks Goloknath. Thanks for the wonderful introduction. Hi everyone. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to everyone from wherever time zone you are joining this event. Let me quickly share my screen. Please confirm once you are able to see my screen.
It's visible.
Yes.
All right. OK. Thank you, everyone. So before getting into the session, I would like to thank all the D365 Champs team members or the organizing team, especially the Deepesh, Ankur, and Venkat, Goloknath, and everyone who is putting a lot of efforts to organize such events in the community. And thanks for having me in this event and sharing my knowledge on the portal security. And if you all know that recently the portal was in headline related to the security breaches or the data leaks. So I just wanted to discuss about some security best practices in this session. So before further ado, I just wanted to begin with the session. I'm going to discuss about the Power Apps portal security. So here my quick introduction. My name is Arpit Shrivastava and I'm a Microsoft MVP in the business application. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer as well. I'm working in Capgemini India as a Power Platform architect. I'm leading the Dynamics 365 user group and recently been awarded as a Power Community Ambassador. I've been writing a lot of interesting stuff on my blog. So if you want to just check it out, you my the new website arpitpowerguide.com. I've been uploading a lot of tips and tricks and fundamental concepts on my YouTube channel as well. So if you want to have a look all the the latest recording of my all the events, you can just find my YouTube channel using Arpit Dynamics. I've been speaking from last 2-3 years in the community. And my favorite areas are the Power Platform, Power Apps portals, the Dynamics 365. I've been working in Dynamics CRM since 2011 version. And from last 2-3 years, I'm working in the Power Platform area. Yeah, so that's about me. If you want to, after this session, if you want to connect me offline or online using my social media channel, you can get in touch with me through my Twitter, my LinkedIn or my Facebook account. OK. All right. So let's discuss about the today's agenda. I'm going to discuss about the portal security, as you know. So I just wanted to first discuss about the fundamental concept of the security and why the portal security is important. All right. Then I will be discussing about the authentication, how the authentication process works in the portal and what sort of authentications that Microsoft provides in the Power Apps portal. Then I will be discussing about some authorization mechanism. All right. Then we have some security best practices. I think that is the most important thing, that what are the best practices or some guidelines that we have to follow while implementing the portal. So that is very important from the the developer perspective while we are implementing the portal or designing a portal. And I have some best real world examples or the use cases based on my personal experience. I've been working in portal since ADX Studio version was there. So, I've seen a lot of growth of the portal. I've seen a lot of loopholes of the portal. So just wanted to discuss about some real time, the use cases so that If any of you are working in the portal projects or in the live implementation, it will help you to fix those issues if it is any loopholes are there. All right. And obviously, if you have any questions, you can get in touch with me in the session and after the session as well. All right. OK, so what is portal security actually? So before discussing about the portal security, I just wanted to tell you like portal is only component is available in the market introduced by the Microsoft that is exposed to the external audience, right? We have a lot of components introduced by the Microsoft. We have the the Canvas app, model driven app. Since Canvas app can also be shared with the external user, but that is for the limited use cases because it requires a license and all. But portal is basically the best component available in the market provided by the Microsoft that is being exposed to the external audience, right? There are many, numerous.
Arpit, I think you are on mute.
Just went off.
Arpit, you are not audible. He's on mute. Why?
So I was on mute since beginning, is it?
No, it's
it's
audible
not.
now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So still agenda, I was audible, right?
Yes,
Yes.
you were audible earlier, and when you started the portal security, you were audible as well.
All right. Okay. Okay. All right, so let me discuss about the portal security. So portal security is one of the most challenging thing right now because portal is the only component available in the market introduced by the Microsoft that is exposed to the external audience. All right, we have some more components like model driven app and Canvas app and some other components that is for the internal purpose. Since Canvas app can also be exposed to the external audience, but that is for the limited use case. So the portal is the only Microsoft component that is exposed to the external users like your customers, your vendors, your partners, contractors, and the employees. Right? There are numerous, business use cases or the requirement where you need to expose the data, the internal Dynamics 365 data to the external audience. In the earlier days, if we talk about, we used to, create the custom .NET portals or the, the HTML pages or single page application in order to design the applications, right? But nowadays we have the portals available so that we can easily expose our Microsoft Dynamics CRM data with the limited access to the external audience. All right. So obviously, if you are designing any portal, if you are exposing any data to the external audience, you have to be make sure that some careful consideration is necessary to avoid exposing your private or the sensitive data, right? So uh, it is about the portal. Now it can also be accessed by the internal users as well. So it is not like that the portal is the component only available for the external users. It can also be available for the internal users as well. There are numerous use cases where we create the portal for the internal users as well. Okay. Now the important thing is that the portal is basically store the data in the Microsoft Dataverse. All right, since it has the connectivity with numerous the data sources as well. You can write the connectors, you can write the APIs to call the data from some external sources as well. But the key source, the primary data source where the data is basically being stored of the portal base, maybe it's a configuration data or it's a customization data. All the data is getting stored in the Microsoft Dataverse. Now you can imagine your organization internal data is also storing in the Microsoft Dataverse, and your external data that is being exposed to the customer is also in the Microsoft Dataverse. So obviously there should be some careful consideration we need to care of, right? All right, so first we discuss about how the Microsoft is actually handling the internal architecture of the portal. So let's discuss about the security of the portal with the internal architecture. So how portal actually connects with the Dataverse. All right, so obviously portal is an external component, and it actually in the background it actually connect with the Dataverse in order to perform all sort of operations, right? So for example, if you're exposing any forms or any list on the portal, you only perform the you only fill the data and just hit the submit, right? It actually creates the data in the background, but what logic or what background process is being handled in the background that actually shows this architecture. So if you can see here, this is the portal server and this is the the Dataverse. So if the portal wants to connect with the Dataverse, first it gets authenticated with the Azure app. Okay, now what is this Azure app actually? So once you provision or install or set up any portal in your Dynamic 365 environment, it actually creates a web app in the background. So if you are just familiar with the Azure basic concept, if you have to create any any external application, maybe it's a C Sharp, PHP or the HTML page, and you want to consume the web API of the Dynamic 365, you must have used the Azure AD web app concept, right? You have to register the app, you get the client ID, you get the secret key, you store it in the Dynamics, and then you get authenticated using that app, right? In the same way, the data, the portal also use the same the architecture. As soon as you registered, as soon as you install the portal, it actually creates a portal web app. OK, and for example, if you are creating 4 portals, then it creates the 4 web apps. So each portal has its own web app, right? So authenticate purpose. So once the portal actually, the portal is actually set up, it actually creates a web app. And if the portal wants to try to, connect with the Microsoft Dataverse to pull and push the data, it first authenticate with the portal web app. The portal web app gives the token back to the server. OK, and then you will be able to perform all sort of SDK calls from the portal. So this is a basic internal architecture or the internal security mechanism, how the portal connects with the Dataverse. All right. Now let's discuss about the external sort of security. OK, this is about the internal security. Now portal is exposed to the customer. Now you are the developer. Now you have to provide the security to the portal. Now any application in this whole world is basically create of 2 things of security. The first is authentication and the second is the authorization. All right. So authentication is basically the process where you have to prove your identity. Means who are you? OK, so whether it's your portal, your Canvas app, your model-driven app, you have to prove your identity. So that is the process where you have to prove your identity, is called the authentication process. Authorization is basically the process where you need to tell that what services or what resources you are going to access once your authentication is done, right? So that is the part of authorization, that what you can do. OK, now any application in this world I told about is follow the same mechanism. First you have to authenticate, then you have to authorize, right? Let's discuss about the security concept or understand the security concept. OK, with the real-time example of airport. OK, so I'm just going to discuss about the airport example. So if you want to enter in the airport, you first need to prove your identity to the security check on the airport gate, right? You have to present your passport, or you have to present any sort of your ID proof in order to prove that you are the person that who are going to enter in the airport. So that is the process called authentication. Now, once you enter in the airport, that doesn't mean that you are allowed to use all the services, all the facilities of the airport, right? You are authorized to do only few things that the airport or the flight airlines provided to you. For example, whether you are allowed to use the free parking services, whether you are allowed to waiting in the VIP lounge, or whether you are allowed to sit in the premium business class or in the economic class. So these sort of privileges. Now once you have entered in the airport, on which particular security gate you have to stand, right, to board into the flight, that is also controlled, right? You cannot enter in any of the gate, or you cannot enter in any of the flight, so there are some sort of restrictions are there in the airport as well. So same like in any application in the portal as well, once you authenticate, once you provide your username and password, there are some mechanism available in the portal through which your security, what services, what data you can access, that can easily be controlled. All right. OK, so there are 2 things, so authentication and the authorization. So first let's discuss about the portal authentication. Now what is the portal authentication? So portal authentication is basically of 2 types. The first one is the local and the second is the external. All right, the local portal authentication is nothing but the form based authentication. It's simply just a form where you have to provide your basic username, your password. You can choose your email address as per your own choice. So it gives you the flexibility that you can choose your username as per your own choice as well, right? So this is basically the type of local authentication. Microsoft doesn't recommend actually to use such sort of authentication in the production instance, but it's up to you. The reason being, it actually store your username and password in your in your contact table in the Microsoft Dataverse. So there might be some GDPR issues as well in few of the regions. So it's up to you. It's up to the client whether they want to use the local authentication. But it just I just want to mention this thing that it is not recommended as such. So there are two types of authentication, local and the external. The second type of authentication is the external one. All right. In the external, basically, it actually authenticate you through the external identity provider. That means your username and password is not going to store in the Microsoft Dataverse. It is getting stored in some external or some external identity providers. So, for example, you can log in into the portal using Facebook, using Twitter, or maybe using LinkedIn or your Gmail account as well. All right. So this sort of authentication is called the external authentication, or we can also call it as a federated identities. OK. Now in this external authentication, now you can have a question like if the Microsoft doesn't allow like the local authentication is not recommended, then what sort of the recommended the default authentication in the in the portal. So the default authentication provider should be the Azure Active Directory B2C. OK, so this is about the portal authentication. There are basically two types, local and external. Now, what is the process that we follow when the local authentication is in place? OK, so if you are an anonymous user, obviously, if you want to access a particular user, you land on the particular portal page as an anonymous user only, right? So if you are a new user, then you need to register yourself first by providing your basic details, your username, your password as per your choice. Then then portal actually creates a contact record in the Microsoft Dataverse using the SDK call that I have shown you in the architecture. So it actually creates a contact and store all sort of authentication related and your basic profile detail information on your contact record. OK, so in the portal, I must tell you, like portal, actually the user is nothing but the portal contact. Like in the Dynamic 365, we have the users that is stored in the user table. So all sort of the logged in user information like username, email address, what business unit it belongs to. So these sort of information we store it in the user table. Same like in the portal, we have the contact. So if I call it as a portal user or if I call it as a user, then in the portal context, it is a contact. All right. So it actually creates a contact in the Microsoft Dataverse. Then it can start getting, it start accessing the portal. Now, what happens if the user has already registered or if it is the the existing user, then in that case they need to they need to put their username and password and their details get verified in the Dynamic 365 using the SDK call, obviously. And once the account or the contact get verified, whether it's a valid user or user is authenticated user, then you get redirected to the portal authenticated page, right? So this is the process that Microsoft actually follow, the portal actually follow for the local authentication. Now let's discuss about the second type of authentication is the external. Now in case of external authentication, obviously your identity is not getting stored in the Dynamics or the Dataverse. So if it is the new user and if they want to log in into the portal or register into the portal, they have the choice, right? They either you want to use the Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. So once they choose a particular identity provider, that particular identity provider gives you the token, right? Based on so there is some background process, right? So once if you want to register or log in using your external identity provider, for example, Facebook or Twitter, you have to create the client ID and the secret key for that, right? For the communication purpose. So if you want to log in using Facebook, that Microsoft sends that client ID to that Facebook. Facebook gives back the token key by verifying that client ID. Then you are allowed to log in into a particular application. So when you log in using an external identity provider, your verification is done through the external identity provider. Then it actually checks, the Microsoft actually checks whether your contact is already present or not. So obviously if you are a new user, then your contacts gets created and you can access the portal. Or if you are an existing user, then you have to again log in using your external identity provider. Then the external identity provider gives you the token, then you can access the portal. Now what happens if your contact is already there of the same email address, then it gets merged actually. OK, so this is the best practice that I'm going to discuss about the security best practice that in the portal, when you are setting up the portal, just make sure the two contacts should not have the duplicate email address, right? Otherwise, uh, uh, you end up with a lot of authentication issue. All right. So, and the middle bar is actually showing like the anonymous user can also access the portal. So that is one of the major thing that we are going to discuss about in the demo or in the security best practices as well. That portal is actually available for the anonymous users as well. So any anonymous user can directly access the portal, but what information you want to display to them, it's up to you actually. So there should be a common best practices or security guidelines you need to follow in order to expose your Microsoft data to the anonymous user. OK, now we have some use cases using that you can simply understand like what are the some use cases related to the authentication. Using that you can imagine like how the authentication mechanism is working actually. So the first use case, as an anonymous user, I just want to browse the portal content. So I'm just discussing about all the use cases one by one, and I'm going to demonstrate all in a one go. All right, because there is a lot of back and forth in the the slide deck and then the demo. So I just want to discuss all the use cases first, then I'll demonstrate in the actual environment. All right, so the first use case, I'm an anonymous user and I just wanted to browse the portal content. Now what content I just want to browse, being an anonymous user, it's up to the organization. So for example, you are creating a retail website or a retail portal, right? So there are some sort of information that you can expose it to the anonymous user without being logged in. So for example, like you can display the product images or the product information, or if I'm creating a portal for the D365 champs, you can just simply display the event details, right? How many events is going to happen in the upcoming months or years. So this information, if I want to access this information, I don't need to be logged in onto the portal, right? So these sort of use cases we may have in the portal, that I want to expose some of the content to the anonymous user. The second use case that we usually get on the portal projects, like as an authenticated user, I want to browse only authorized portal content. So sometimes what happen is like, so for example, we are building a Power Apps portal for the D365 champs. OK, so there are two use cases. The first use case, when I hit the portal URL on the landing page, I should be able to see all the events that is going to be happen, right? So as an anonymous user, I can view all the events, I can view the portal content, but if I try to register for a particular event, I have to prove myself, right? I have to provide my identity provider information. So same like that, if I'm the authenticated user, I want to browse only authorized portal content. So if I want to register on the portal, I need to provide my username, password, maybe using LinkedIn, Facebook or Twitter, and then I will be able to register for a particular event. OK, so this is the second use case from the authenticated user perspective. The third use case is, as an administrator, I want to manage the portal UI and content. So sometimes there is a particular team or in your or a particular user or a group that is handling a particular website or the portal, right? So in the same way, the portal has also a mechanism that any administrator user can directly manage the portal UI and the content from the portal itself, from the portal UI itself. So that is also a use case. Sometimes some organization request to create a single admin user, or sometimes it may have a group of admin users as well. The fourth use case is, as a CRM administrator. It's not a portal administrator, it's a CRM administrator. I want to invite the external customer to access the portal. Now there are numerous use cases for that. The first use case is like that I already have some contacts available in my in my environment, right? Now I've installed the portal and I just want to give them access, the existing contact access to the portal. Now how can I do that? Because you can think of it, once the user register from the portal, it actually creates a contact in the CRM. But if my contact is already present in the CRM, then how can I give the access to that particular contact? All right, so for this sort of scenarios, we have the invitation features in the portal. So being a CRM administrator, I can just simply open a contact record in the CRM and can send the invitation, so that once the user register from the portal, they get linked to the existing contact rather creating a new contact in the CRM. OK, so this is the use case number 4. The use case number 5 is, as a CRM admin, I want to access portal using my Azure AD account. OK, there are many use cases for that as well. Like, I am a CRM administrator or I am a CRM user and I want to access the portal, because sometimes in the organization it happens due to some, I would say due to some the license policies. Some organization give the access to the internal users as well. rather giving access to the internal resources. So for example, I'm working in an organization and I just want to use some of the features of the dynamic CRM like the lead or the opportunity, right? Just to access the lead and the opportunity, it doesn't make sense to give the dynamic 365 whole license, right? So sometimes the organization tends to, give the portal license and just give me the lead and the opportunity entity access. So for these sort of scenarios, actually the internal user can also want to get the access on the portal. So if I want to access on the portal, I can simply use my Azure AD account as well in order to log in onto the portal. So that use case I'm also going to demonstrate as well. The use case number 6 related to the authentication is allow portal access only for the limited audience. That is one of the most important requirement in any project. Like portal is a public website or the public facing website. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it might be the requirement that you don't want to restrict the external audience, but sometimes you want to restrict the limited audience, restrict the the portal for the limited audience. Reason being, there might be the possibility that some of the some of the requests are being coming on the portal which is not actually necessary. So in that case, you want to restrict the portal access. So you can do it by couple of ways. The first one is the invitation that I discussed in the previous use case. Like you can use the site settings features of the portal to disable the registration option. OK, and only allowed the portal registration using invitation process. All right. So by using that, if I am the anonymous user, I'm hitting the portal URL, I'll not be able to register on the portal unless or until I get the invitation from the CRM administrator. OK, so using this one technique, you can restrict the external the audience. The second way to do that is, you can simply provide a form on the portal or maybe on the registration, the sign up page. When user registered on the particular portal, you just land that user in a particular table, and once the approval is done by any of the internal team or the user, then only you give the access on the portal. OK, so this is also a use case, I have seen in many of the business requirement, that, I don't want to give the user unless someone approving in the dynamic CRM. And so this is the also way you can restrict a particular user group or the user to access the portal. The third way to do that for the internal user. So for the external, we have the portal invitation, we have the approval process. Now the third restriction is for the internal users. Now I am the internal user. I have the Azure AD account. I can access the portal using single sign-on, right? How can I restrict a particular user group or a team in the Dynamics 365 for being access the portal? OK, so we have the Azure AD access policies as well. So if you have heard about this, the Microsoft has recently introduced a lot of new features in the Azure AD, the conditional policy as part of Microsoft Ignite. So Azure AD conditional policy is basically a feature where you can give the conditional access to your Microsoft resources. OK, so for example, like you have installed the Dynamic 365, sorry, Power Apps portal in your Dynamic 365 environment, and you have 100 user in your Dynamics, right? So obviously all the 100 user can access the portal using their Azure AD account. There is no access restrictions. But you want that I have a particular customer service team who has only 50 user and I just want to give them access to the portal. Rest 50 user I don't want to give them access because they are handling the sales department. OK, now how can I do that? So the first way to do that is the portal invitation. Obviously, the second for the internal user, there is a best way to do that is the Azure AD access policy. So I've written a very good article on that how you can restrict a particular user group or the Dynamics 365 user using Azure AD conditional access policies. OK, so that is the use case number 6. And the last use case of the authentication is I want to block portal access for a specific user or a particular group. I have actually identified that a particular user or a particular team is I just want to block them to access the portal. Then the first option you can blacklist that IP address using the Power Platform, sorry, the Portal Admin Center. So you can restrict or the block portal access using the IP address. The second way to do that is you can disable that contact. So if you are using a local authentication, you can simply disable a contact, then user will not be able to log in. And in the contact record itself, there are some options like allow sign in or allow sign up sort of things. So you can just uncheck that option. If you are using Azure AD B2C, then making the contact disable in the contact will not work. You have to go to the Azure Active Directory and you have to disable that user or delete that user, or you have to deactivate that user, right? Then only that particular user will not be able to access. So there are some use cases where you want to block the portal access. So these are the some authentication use cases I just wanted to discuss. Now let's discuss about the authorization part. Now once I'm done with the authentication, now I have entered into the portal. Now what sort of information I can access that is controlled by the portal authorization? So portal authorization is basically is managed by the four components: entity permissions, web roles, website access permission, and web page access control. I'm not going to discuss about a very deep dive way like what is entity permission, what is web role and not. The entity permission is simply, it's simply like a role based security or record based security. OK, so record based security in the Dynamics 365 is basically handle that which record is going to be accessed by which user, right? So it is the same way when you want to restrict a particular entity records for a particularly specific user, then you use the entity permission. OK, nowadays we call it as a table permission. Now the second way is doing that the web role. So web role is nothing like the security role in the Dynamics 365. So same way in the security role we have two things: privileges and the access level. In the same way the web role has two things: the entity permission, or we call it as a table permission, and the second is the scope. OK, so what sort of scope or what sort of access level you want to give on a particular table. OK, the third one is the website access permission. The website access permission is basically used to manage who can directly manage the content of the portal, or who can directly manage the UI of the portal. So if you are the administrator and you have the website access permission enabled, then you can directly edit the site markers, or the toolbar or the home page and the content snippet. So these sort of information you can directly edit from the portal UI itself if you have the website access permissions. If you want to disable that option, then no one can directly access or update the portal UI from the portal UI itself. The last one is the web page access control. So there are many use cases where you want to restrict a particular page access from a particular user group or a particular user. In that case, you use the web page access control rule. OK, now I'm going to discuss about the scope first. OK, so in the entity permission, like in the Dynamics 365 security role, we have the access level. In the same way, we have the permission scopes as well. So if you have provided the global scope, which you should not provide to all the entities level, the global or the organization level scope, you must only provide it for the entity that is not confidential. For example, sometimes you want to expose the countries, the cities, or some sort of master data information like country, city. So this sort of information which is not confidential, right? So you can expose it or you can just give the global permissions. OK, but just make sure if you are giving the global permission, that table is not going to store or exposing any sort of the confidential data. So the global is basically sort of permission where you have the access of all the records. The second type is the contact. In the contact privilege, you are allowed to access only the records which is owned by you. OK, so for example, I have registered 5 cases or submitted 5 cases from the portal. So I should be able to access only my cases, not the other user cases. So in that case, you give the contact scope. The third one is the account level scope. If you want to see the records of your organization level. So for example, I want to see all the cases submitted by Capgemini or submitted by the D365 champs, right? So I can see that using the account scope. The fourth one is the parental one, which actually comes into the picture when you have to maintain the parent-child relationship. So for example, I want to view my case and whatever notes I have added on that case, because case and notes has the 1:1 relation. So if I want to access the notes as well along with the case, then I have to have the parental relationship, parental scope available on that particular table. And the last one is the self. So self is basically nothing. It's a very simple scope which actually lets you, edit or update your own contact record. So for example, when I register on the portal, I actually redirect to the profile page. So in the profile page, I'm allowed to update my own information. So by default, you have the access to update your own contact information. But in numerous use cases, if you want to create a contact form on the portal where you want to display your profile details, you can control that using self scope, whether any user is allowed to update their own contact details or they can allow to update the other contact details. OK, so you can do that using self. All right, so there are some use cases for the authorization as well. So as an anonymous user, I want to create a view portal context, right? So that I've already discussed. There might be the use case where some anonymous user want to create the data, they want to they want to view the portal content, and as an anonymous, as an authenticated user, I want to manage my own portal content, so that we can usually manage using table permissions or the scope. I'm going to demonstrate that as soon. In the use case number 3, as an authenticated user, I want to manage my account level portal content, so that we can also control by the scope. And as an authenticated user, I want to manage all portal content, so that we can manage by the global scope. And the last one is, as an authenticated user, I should not be able to access unauthorized portal pages. So there might be the pages that you have designed for a specific user or group that you don't want to allow the access to the external other users. So you can manage it using the backpage access control rule. All right. All right. So these are the authentication and the authorization. Now I'm going to discuss about the security best practices. All right. So before discussing about the security best practices, I just wanted to discuss about the data leak that happened recently. So as per the recent UpGuard report, customer that suffered from the portal data leak are these one. So the Microsoft themselves actually suffered with this particular data leak. So Microsoft actually designed the global payroll service portal using Power Apps portal, and you can imagine, like, if I hit the portal URL using OData feeds, I'm able to access all this information earlier. Okay, and same like the Microsoft, there are some giant clients like American Airlines, Ford, and some global payroll services. So these sort of clients has actually faced the security, the data leak issues in the portal. Okay, all the information of the customer, like basic profile details, like the full name, email address, was being exposed. Okay, what was the reason for that? The reason was not following the security best practices, and obviously there was some loophole in the design as well. Okay, now what was the reason for that? The first one is the not following the security best practices. Okay, so that I'm going to discuss about in the next slide, that what security best practice you have to follow. The second thing is the loopholes in a few portal components. So there was some loopholes that the developer did not actually follow the best practices for. So for example, the OData feeds. So there was no particular restriction that OData feeds should have the entity permission should enable. OData feeds is basically used to expose your portal data on the portal on the portal, and there was no access restriction that you can enable the permission in that. The second was enable table permission was not mandatory, or if you have not enabled a particular table permission, there was no as such warning or message from the Microsoft side like this is not a good solution, or this is not the good approach, like that. Right, so there is no warning, or if security best practices are not followed. Now what Microsoft has improved after this data leak or data breach? The first thing improvement is the permission warning. Now if you try to design the portal from the Power Apps Studio, or maybe from the portal management model driven app, you get to see that your data is not secure. So if you have not enabled a proper if you not manage the permission in a proper way, you get the notification that one of or more list of the forms have not set the proper permissions. All right. The second improvement that Microsoft did is the OData feeds. So earlier the OData feeds, so when you enable a particular OData feeds feature in an entity list, there was a feature called enable entity permission or table permission that was not mandatory earlier, but right now it's by default check. But if you try to uncheck that value, you get the error message like table permission must be enabled from the general tab. Okay, so these sort of warnings or messages now Microsoft is giving. The third best option is provided by Microsoft is the portal checker. That was there before the data leak as well, but portal checker is one of the best way. So once you are done with your development, you want to just have a look all the list of the security loopholes, or want to just review your security settings, you can just go to the Power Platform Portal Admin Center. You can just run the portal checker and you get to see all the list of errors and the warnings. Okay, if you have any security loopholes, you get to see in this particular list. So these are the improvement that Microsoft recently done. The last thing, the security best practices. So I'll quickly go through that. Then I'll take five minutes of time to to quickly demonstrate the things. The security best practices is don't forget to enable the table permission. I've already mentioned that whether you are creating forms, lists, or raw data, just enable that table permissions. Don't forget to associate the web roles with the table permission. So sometimes what happens is you are creating a permission, but you forget to associate the web role. So it get exposed to everyone, right? So you just need to make sure that you are associating appropriate web role, whether it's authenticated, anonymous, or the administrator one. All right. Uncheck the default authenticated user role assign option while creating a custom web role. OK, so when you are creating a custom web role, there is an option. I'll just quickly show you that there is an option called authenticated user role. So that by default assign that custom web role to all the authenticated users. So just make sure you are just unchecking that option. Disable the pages you are not exposing to the portal. OK, so that is also one of the biggest thing, like, if you are configuring your portal, there are some sort of out of box or default pages comes with you, and you just leave them, you just remove from the toolbar and just create your own page, right? So just make sure that is still available. So if I'm the developer, I know that what pages or what partial URL of that particular web page, I can go to your portal URL, I can just put that partial URL on the portal, append with the portal URL, then I can get to see all the information. I can access that web page. So just make sure if that particular web page is unused, if you're not using on the portal, just disable them. OK. Second pages of the security best practice, we have the remove commented JavaScript, jQuery, HTML, liquid code from the pages. So what sort of information, what sort of code you are writing on any of the component in the web template, in the entity form, web pages, just make sure there is no sensitive code is written in the comment, right? Because you can easily get it from the browser console as well. Enable captcha for the forms, expose the anonymous user. So I told you earlier, like if you are exposing information to the anonymous user, there is some extra care of security you need to provide. The first thing is that you need to enable the entity permission, you need to enable the web roles. Then another thing is that you need to enable the captcha so that you can secure your web pages from the the robot or the bot access. Provide portal access to the limited audience. I've already told you, unless or until it is really required to expose the portal to all the audience, just use the Azure conditional access policies, use the portal approval process, and then use the invitation process so that your portal is exposed to the limited audience. OK, recommended to write the sensitive code in the web template. It avoids exposing it from the browser console. So wherever it is possible, if you're writing a sensitive code or confidential data, maybe when you're exposing any, if you're calling any API and expecting any sensitive data from that external source, so just avoid writing that code in the web page or maybe in the entity form or in the entity list. Use the liquid template code or the web template code. Contacts must have the unique email address in the Dataverse. If not fixed, that to avoid any authentication issues. OK, so that I've already discussed, like all the contacts must have the unique email address. Otherwise, you will get a lot of authentication issues and maybe some security breaches as well. The last is use Portal Management Studio to configure, design the portal that enforce you to use the security defaults, right? So we have two options available to design or customize the portal. The first one is, your Portal Management model-driven app, and the second is the Portal Studio, Portal Management Studio. So the Portal Management Studio is the future, and where Microsoft has, by default enable a lot of permissions in the OData feeds, in the tables for you. You don't need to enable it manually, and you get to see a lot of warnings and the messages related to the security, right? So try to use the Portal Management Studio instead of Portal Management model-driven app. OK, if you are a champ or you are an expert in the security, then you can use the Portal Management Studio as Portal Management app as well. Use portal checker that I've already discussed to identify all the security loopholes. For the custom pages, try to use the liquid code and web API to perform the operation in the Dataverse, right? Because liquid template and web API is the more secure way as compared to the OData and other sort of, the business logic component we have provided. Portal doesn't support actually field level security. So that is the idea we already submitted in the portal IDEA portal, the Microsoft IDEA portal, that we don't have the field security, field level security, same like the Dynamics 365. So you can manage it using web page access rules and the web rule. So for example, there is a sensitive field credit card information that you want, if you want to expose that field to a particular user group, not to the another user group, right? So what you can do is you can create a separate page, use the same information, use the same form. In the one page, you can just use that field. In the one page, you don't need to use that field, and you can manage the hide and show of the web page using the web roles, right? So that is the alternative way right now to manage the field level security. The last one is that don't provide global scope to the table unless it is really required. OK, so it is like the organization level of privilege in the dynamic CRM. So unless it is really required, don't use it. Otherwise, just go with the basic level privilege like we have the contact, account and the self. All right. So these are all the security best practices and the stuff related to the security. If I have the time, like I can quickly show you some settings related to the portals. OK, so here this is my Power Apps portal. OK, so I am logged in here and in another browser I have just logged in as an anonymous user. So as we had some use cases like as an anonymous user, I should be able to browse the content. So if you can see here, I'm not logged in here, but still I can see some of the content on the portal, like I have the form available like on the contact us. So here I can simply fill up the form. So there might be the the scenario where user don't need to sign up or sign in on the portal to register to provide the details or submit the details. So these sort of information we can provide. Like if they want to see the list as well, I have exposed the list as well. So if I open the cases, so if you can see here, I'm not logged in, but still I can see the cases as well. All right. And obviously for if I talk about the authenticated user can see all the information as well. And this is the admin screen. Actually, once you logged in as an admin, you get to see this pop up and you get to see this editor option so that you can directly add it to your portal UI as well. So basically this is managed by the web roles. So if I go to the web roles, actually there are three types of web role. We have the anonymous, administrator and the authenticated. So you can control your portal content access using that. So if your user has the administrator role, they can do anything on the portal. They can customize the UI, they can access the record. Anonymous user, we have to provide the limited access, and same with the authenticated user. OK, so for example, I've actually exposed a case list here. So if you can see here, there is a case list I've exposed to the for the anonymous user and for the authenticated user. Let me check here. Now, how the entity permission works here, like if I go to the entity permissions, I have created a table permission called case. Now in the case, right now I have provided actually the global access to the anonymous and the authenticated user. That's why this case list or the case entity list is being exposed to the anonymous authenticated vote. So if I just remove that anonymous access, because I don't want to expose that case list or the cases created by all the user, I just remove that anonymous option and just giving the access to the authenticated user. Let me refresh the portal. And if I go back to the anonymous user login, you can see there is no cases being listed in this particular page. All right, so this can be handled using table permission. Now I'm an authenticated user. Now if you can see, the customer is there are a lot of customers are there, Arpit and the Victor. So I don't want to see the Victor cases because I have the global access right now. I only want to see my cases, which is being registered by me. OK, so I am the logged in user. I want to see only these two cases. So how can I do that? I can go here. I can simply provide the contact level privilege. And I just need to select the relationship. Now, why this relationship is important? Because there might be multiple contact lookup option available on the case entity. So on this particular lookup field, you are storing a contact level information or the logged in user information is basically handled by this particular relationship. It's taking time. Let me go back here. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt, Arpit. A quick time check.
Yep. I'm almost done. Just can I take 5 minutes more?
For sure, yeah.
Okay,
We still have 9 minutes. Yeah.
Right. OK, so if I choose the contract relation, because I'm storing the contact information in this relationship, and if I save it and clearing the cache, and if I go back to the portal, perfect. So I can see only my cases, right? Now, if I want to see all the cases registered at my organization level, I will go here, choose the scope as account and choose the relationship as customer. We'll save the record. Refresh the portal. So I should be able to see all the cases registered by the Capgemini. All right. So if I refresh it. Okay, so now I can see all the cases registered by the Capgemini. All right. Now the third thing is that if I have to manage the page level access, I can just simply go to that particular web page. So this is how you can restrict a particular page. Right now you can see I cannot access the information on the page, but I can still access the page, right? I want to allow only access to the authenticated user. So on the web page level, I have the access control rule. You can simply create a web page access. So always make sure that if you are creating any particular custom web page, just enable the web page access control rule. Or if you have any unused web pages as well, make sure either you remove that, either maybe you can remove that, you can deactivate them, or you can enable the access control rule so that they can only be accessible to your organization. So for example, restrict, and I need to choose the website. Restrict, save it, and I just want to associate this web role like only authenticated user can see that. Perfect. And if I hit the refresh, and if I go back here, I must get the error. So if you can see here, I cannot access this particular page. Ideally, I should be redirected. I should get the error message, but I have not enabled that from the site settings. So I'm getting this error message. So I cannot access that. But if I go back to the portal authenticated user, I can still access that particular page. So these sort of the information we have. And if you can see here as a logged in user, I can add it the content as well. So if I have logged in as a user, my name is there. So I can also manage the content of the portal based on the logged in user role as well. So if I have the authenticated user role, then I want to display the name of the user. Or if I am the if I'm the anonymous user, then I just wanted to the display hello anonymous user. So say if you have such requirement to manage the portal content based on the role, because there are numerous use cases for the anonymous users. So you can manage using Power Apps web page access control rule. You can manage it using entity permissions. You can use it web roles, and we have the that liquid template web roles as well. All right. So these are some examples that I just wanted to discuss. So thank you from my side, and thank you everyone. If you have any questions related to the security, then please ask me. Thanks. Thank you.
Yes, Arpit. Yeah, thank you so much for a great session. We have one question from Amol. What are the other ways to do CRUD operation than liquid template and web API?
It depends actually what sort of business use case you have, because web API nowadays support all sort of CRUD operation. What sort of requirement you have that you are not allowed to use web API? Because in the earlier way we could use the Power Automate as well using HTTP trigger. Right, we had other options as well, but nowadays we have the web API, so it is the recommended way to use the web API itself. But just tell me that what is the use case or the business requirement that you are not allowed to use the web API to perform the CRUD operation?
Amol, do you want to unmute and explain the question? Amol Patil. I think he'll get in touch with you after this call.
Yep, sure. So if any requirement that because web API fit all sort of requirements related to the CRUD operation, but if you don't want to use that, you have the Power Automate option available, so you can do it using Power Automate as well.
Okay. Okay. Like he's saying he cannot share the requirement actually.
Oh, no worries, but yeah, you have the Power Automate option available, because obviously if you are not using web API to perform the CRUD operation, obviously the question is like that because that component is provided by Microsoft to perform the CRUD operation, but still you are not using that, then what is the reason of that at least?
Okay. Any more questions, team? We still have 4 minutes to live. Okay, another question from Anand Nigam. Can the anonymous user access also consume license?
Yeah, it actually depends on number of pages basis. So the license is basically divided in two parts, for anonymous and for authenticated. The anonymous user license count based on the number of page views, and the authenticated is license is it cost depends on the number of authentications, the number of user login per day.
Hope that answers the question, Anand. Another question from Srinivasa. Do we really need to go and learn advanced web development in required like do we really need to go learn advanced web development is required, or out of box is more than enough to build the portal? How much secure if we use the third part coding source?
I would say in the earlier version of the portal, we had some sort of restrictions that we were not allowed to customize the portal much. But right now we have the PCF controls are also available in the portal, and we have a lot of capabilities are there. So I don't think, and I didn't see, in my real time projects or from the community experience as well, that anyone is using any external sources to write the portal code or development purpose, because we have a lot of components, we have a lot of sort of mechanism. Now you have the PCF controls, you can customize the port in the whatever way you like. So I would say that we have a lot of ways to do that. Use the PCF component, use the out of box way. We have the client side scripting, we have the liquid code, and now it is integrated with the Power Platform component as well. So you can integrate your Power Apps, your Canvas app. You can use the PCF component. You can use the Power Automate. So a lot of business logic you have.
Another question from Anand. Can we get the logs of per user per page access along with geotagging?
I'm not sure about the geotagging, but as per the Dilip, who is the Microsoft practice manager from the Microsoft side. So in the last portal event, he told that Microsoft is going to introduce a new feature. I don't know the name of that feature, but soon you will get that in the upcoming release, where you can track the user login and what page is being accessed by which user. So these sort of information, same like the Canvas app, you will get it on the the portal admin center soon.
Last question from Shiv. How do we authenticate Power Automate via portals?
How do we authenticate Power Automate by portals? I didn't understand why you need to authenticate that portals, because why you need to authenticate the Power Automate, because you need to write that code inside your Dynamics 365. And if you want to call the Power Automate using the portals, you need to use the HTTP trigger. And HTTP trigger is similar like the any sort of external API. And you can just simply call that API using your client side code, your JavaScript, by passing some sort of header information, and you can access that Power Automate. So right now, to call that Power Automate using portal, you have that API call, the HTTP trigger is there.
Uh, so um, so we'll end this session. The next speaker is lined up, and okay. So Shiv, like you can connect with him through any of the social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. And like Arpit will answer your questions. And thank you so much for joining, everyone. We really appreciate your presence. We hope that you are taking away some powerful learning from this session. Thanks to Arpit Shrivastava for an amazing session on Power as Portal Security Best Practices and sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you so much, Arpit.
Thanks, Ankush. Thanks for the whole team. Thank you.
Thank you.